I think in summary, we can see why it's such a pertinent topic, but also the education piece that as lawyers, I think needs to happen for all of the reasons that I've mentioned.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. Whether you're at school, sixth form, university, thinking about a career in law, or exploring law careers, you're in the right place. We are the one-stop shop for student lawyers. If you'd like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com. Welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. My name's Camilla and I'm a trainee solicitor at Shakespeare Martineau, which is a law firm in London, and I'm going to be your host for today. In today's episode, we're joined by Charlotte Riley, Director at CSS Assure, which is an organisation that provides information security consultancy services in areas including cybersecurity, cyber resilience, and GDPR. CSS Assure is part of the AMPA group, which Shakespeare Martineau also sits under, and we are collaborating on this episode to bring you information that will hopefully help you in your careers as lawyers. Charlotte is a skilled security leader with 15 years of IT and information security experience. During her career, Charlotte has supported the MOD, the MOJ, the UK government, NATO, and leading Fortune 200 organisations in a broad range of security programmes. So she is an absolute expert at cybersecurity, and it's going to be really interesting to pick her brain during this episode. In this episode, we are going to be examining what the importance of cybersecurity is and why cybersecurity is a concern for law firms, and what firms and employees can do to prevent security incidents. So without further ado, let's hand over to Charlotte. Thank you for joining us in today's episode, Charlotte. It's great to have you here.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Thanks for the wonderful introduction, and looking forward to talking to you about all things cybersecurity.
Absolutely. No, you've got a fantastic experience. So I'd like to maybe kick off the episode with finding out a little bit more about why cybersecurity is such a hot topic at the moment in the legal industry.
Yeah, of course. So it's become such a critical topic, I think, or believe, because of a few factors. So we can start with compliance, regulatory compliance. Of course, in the legal world, this is extremely important, both from an SRA point of view and from a legal GDPR point of view. So operating in a regulated environment, of course, these things need to be taken really seriously. The implications are high. So looking at specific data protection and privacy regulations, of course, we've got to manage data breaches and all the things that go along with those in the correct way. So, of course, this would be really high profile for a law firm. The data that the legal sector manages and processes is of absolute sensitivity, and really the core of what a law firm does, of course. So for client data to go missing, for it to be stolen, this would be taken seriously both by the SRA and the regulators in the UK and the ICO, but also it would impact your clients and therefore the reputation of the firm. So that's massive. And I think as for the sector as a collective, one of the most critical things that we should be looking at and taking seriously. When it comes to, and I just touched on it, client confidentiality, that's at the core of what the legal sector does, as I've mentioned. So implementing the appropriate security controls to make sure that the correct things are being done on the right systems at a policy and technology and people level is of the utmost importance. And then we can come into managing client expectations. So, of course, some of the clients that a law firm will encounter, large organizations, companies, corporations, are going to expect the most robust and resilient frameworks and approach to managing client data. And they're going to want that to be demonstrated to them. So the weight of the due diligence that will be expected, and of course, that's not just a paperwork exercise. Those frameworks have to be implemented within the company, within the organization. So frameworks such as ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials Plus, and everything that sits under that. As I've just mentioned, that's going to be a lot of policy work, not just the technical controls that go in place. So when you're bidding for work, this is going to be an important part of it. So it really is going to affect everybody, not just the technical teams. And then from there is actually supporting clients in their journey, in their cybersecurity journey. So we'll talk about it further on in the podcast, but it affects every company. So if you're advising a client, more than likely this topic will come up, and you want to be able to at least advise them on the right things, what they should be doing to manage their compliance, their resilience journey, or indeed you might be responding to something that's happened because as a result of a cybersecurity attack, some fraud has occurred. An invoice has been paid incorrectly to different people, and you're in litigation. It's a topic that I think most people, especially legal teams, need to be versed in to properly advise their clients, or at least refer them to expert support if it's needed. And then from there, we can just talk about, I suppose, how things have changed in the last few years since COVID. More people working from home, especially in professional services, because we can, right? And with that brings different challenges in terms of data protection, cybersecurity, home networks, people moving around again, and more devices. This brings the topic even more to the forefront in terms of its difficulty to manage it and create, I suppose, the right working capability for individuals, while maintaining appropriate controls. So there are a few challenges out there in terms of how cybersecurity is dealt with, how we look after our clients, and how we also advise our clients in the round. So I think in summary, we can see why it's such a pertinent topic, but also the education piece that, as lawyers, I think needs to happen for all of the reasons that I've mentioned.
So fascinating. I think it's not always obvious on face value that cybersecurity is so pervasive, but how you just explained it is really interesting, and you can really see how it affects everything from reputation to attracting and advising clients, and the regulatory aspects as well, and as well as the other aspects that you mentioned. So yeah, that's really insightful. Thank you for going into that in so much detail.
For the past 4 years, I have been very lucky in the sense that I have had the shoulders of friends and family to sob on, and unfortunately for them to vent at, whilst I have been under pressure and stress from university deadlines, and whilst going through the grueling process of training contract applications and interviews. They have been my unofficial therapists, and during tough times have reminded me that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. But it's not always possible to rely on a friend or family member to help you through difficult times, especially if they are not trained therapists. And sometimes speaking to somebody outside of your family or friendship circle is a better option anyway. If you're going through stressful times, looking to improve the quality of your life, vent, or need somebody to remove the weight of the world from your shoulders, BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's podcast, may be right for you. BetterHelp is the largest therapy platform in the world, and it changes the way people approach their mental health and helps them tackle life's challenges by providing accessible and affordable care. The therapists at BetterHelp are qualified to help you through everything from daily stresses to anxiety, relationships, depression, addictions, eating, sleeping, trauma, anger, family conflicts, grief, self-esteem, and much more. After you sign up, BetterHelp will match you to a therapist who fits your objectives, preferences, and the type of issues that you are dealing with. So whilst a friend or family member, aka an unofficial therapist, is great to speak to, therapists on BetterHelp include psychologists, family therapists, licensed clinical social workers, and licensed professional counsellors. Visit www.betterhelp.com/TSL for 10% off your first month. That's www.betterhelp.com/TSL for 10% off of your first month. I know that I'm looking forward to using BetterHelp to help me get through the SQE when I start it next year.
What other businesses should be most concerned about cybersecurity and why?
So all businesses, really, regardless of their size or industry, should be concerned about cybersecurity. But it all is linked to their risk profile. So, of course, a smaller organization that is managed really has a low amount of data. It's not sensitive. Their operations wouldn't be affected if their systems were to be hit by a ransomware attack. These things can affect them, but their risk profile isn't as high. But then you start to look at financial institutions, healthcare organizations, law firms. We've just talked about that. That they're more at risk because of the type of clients that they have, the type of data that they carry, the way their operations run. So, for example, we can look at critical infrastructure. If a cyber attack were to happen to an energy company and they were no longer able to supply the grid, for example, that's affected them in several ways. They can no longer operate, so they're losing money. The reputational damage, we just talked about how that can affect an organization. They're not able to access data, so that potentially their systems are offline. It can absolutely sideline a company for an amount of time that we can't actually guess how long it would take to recover. And then it starts to affect clients. So if those clients are end users, so people haven't got electricity, a section of the critical infrastructure isn't working, you can start to see the impact or think about the impact. So on top of that, technology companies that heavily rely on technology, they're in the same boat. So it applies to everybody, but it's really about understanding the risk profile of an organization.
Absolutely. And, I think it's often in the news. I saw recently that there was an airline and other sort of retail businesses which have been targets recently.
Yes.
Anyone who processes payments could potentially be a target because of that financial sensitive information that hackers, I'm sure, would love to get their hands on.
Absolutely. E-commerce and retail. So that they're an element of most organizations that have some level of e-commerce, including airlines, right? So that payment processing is absolutely a prime target.
And going back to law firms, what do you think they can be doing to reduce the risks of cyber attacks?
So really with any company, there needs to be a risk assessment. So it goes back to what I just said about a risk profile. So you need to understand your potential vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities are really opportunities that exist across your infrastructure, whether that's your technical infrastructure, the way you process, you manage processes and policies. And from there, you need to look at the impact of potential threats on those vulnerabilities. So it's essentially an audit or an assessment to say, where are we vulnerable, and actually what risks are out there that could affect us as an organization. So it's the same as any risk management, whether it be financial risk management or and any other area that you're looking after, you need to understand your risk profile so you can then develop a comprehensive information security program based upon that. So it sounds really complicated, but it's just saying, where are we exposed and what should we do about it? What's appropriate? And building out a security program that addresses processes, technology, and people. So you want your people to be trained. You want them to understand how they affect risk to the organization, and also use them as a weapon against it, right? To protect the organization. In terms of technology, you need the right protections in place to look after the highest value parts of your infrastructure, and also to protect your data, of course. And then from a policy and process point of view, making sure you're protected from a regulatory point of view, but also that you have the correct policies in place, and that your people are educated in those and are managing and what they do on a day-to-day basis appropriately.
That's really interesting. Thank you for going into that. And how does CSS Assure help its clients reduce the risks related to cybersecurity?
So our approach, or the way we think about this, is it's complicated. Not everybody is a technical person, and actually cybersecurity, we don't believe is a fully technical subject. It has an element of that, but this is about having a balanced and pragmatic approach to understanding risk and doing the right things about it. So we take that balanced and pragmatic approach to translating complex topics and subjects to our clients, but also giving them a scalable, approachable way to manage their cybersecurity, information security, data protection concerns. So from anything from a startup where we can provide a helpline, all the way to having a managed security operations center where we can put technology in place, AI solutions that absolutely monitor and respond to cybersecurity attacks. And then everything in the middle, from consultancy and policy support to building out a roadmap or an architecture for tech companies that really need the security wrap at the design or the infancy of the design of a solution to the point where they sell in the future. So it's about growing with our clients and also helping them understand their journey in terms of creating resilience for their company and feeling well protected. And if anything does happen, helping them respond in the right ways.
It sounds like you have a really broad offering there, and it seems like something that could be tailored for different businesses depending on their needs, which sounds really, really good. So going back to touch on what you said previously about educating employees, how do you think that employees of law firms and businesses in general can help the companies that they work for and prevent those cybersecurity attacks?
So I talked briefly about employees being part of your arsenal, right, to protect against cybersecurity attacks. And it's in simple things. So most organizations, if hopefully, are doing some cybersecurity awareness training. If they're not, it's something you can get access to quite easily. But it's in that, it's in awareness. So understanding what a phishing attack looks like, and it's not a case of not falling for it. Some of them are very sophisticated, but doing the right checks, putting the right checks and balances in before you open an attachment that might have some malware attached to it, to understand what a social engineering attack may look like, and protecting yourself against that. Don't make yourself a target. So in terms of social media, if you're very active, you're a senior member or even just a member of a law firm, and from there somebody is able to target you, be aware of what those attacks might look like. And so we all whiz through this kind of training, but it's actually really important. So we're all busy just take the time and take the due diligence to make sure that you're doing the right things. Being safe on the internet, I know the easy thing to say is, what does that mean? And again, I think it's just in diligence, thinking before you do something. And then I think reporting. So if something looks wrong, if it looks potentially suspicious, just report it and get the support that you need from your compliance teams internally.
Those are really helpful tips. And I was quite interested, you mentioned social engineering attack. I haven't come across that term before. Are you able to just provide a little bit of an explanation about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So social engineering attack, sometimes it's tailored to the individual, sometimes not. But it's, if you're thinking about the way a hacker would try and gain entry into an organization, a phishing attack is very simple. It can be quite generic. We just send it by email. Actually, a social engineering attack is understanding something about the target. So say if you wanted to target a HR director within a company, then one, you'd find some HR directors, you would get some information about that person. You might even get their phone number. You might understand something about them, and then you launch your attack using that information. So it could be, I know that this person shops online at such a website because you've found that out through some research, and then you launch a tailored attack on that person with reference to something that you know about them, so it's much more believable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Yeah, that's quite scary, isn't it, to know that there are people out there. And sometimes you think, oh, it's easy to notice if someone is, trying to launch a cyber attack. We think it's just, oh, click this dodgy link here and it's really obvious, but it is definitely worrying that people are going to these lengths to impersonate other people, and you really have to be diligent, like you said earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really leveraging personal information that's out there about you. So a way to mitigate that, of course, is to be aware of what you're sharing, posting, historic social media data that's out there. But also, if something does look legitimate, still having that awareness of, would this person normally send me this? Is there something suspicious about this communication? Because attackers can leverage phone calls. They can pretend to be your bank because they know where you bank, that kind of thing. And I'm not saying no one should be living in fear. I think it's just being aware and taking your time before taking action.
And what do you think are the most common mistakes, or just mistake perhaps, that is made in relation to cyber security?
So if we take that from two, I suppose, points of view, I think at an individual level, it seems so simple, but passwords, it's boring, it's talked about a lot, but if we take a physical security point of view, it's a window lock, that it's a window that's just been left open. So a lot of the systems that we use are externally facing. What I mean is connected to the internet. So if a password is already known, or it's been stolen, in a data breach, and it's the same across everything that you use, or the platforms that you use, then that's a very easy route in. So password hygiene, or as we call it, or having a password management solution, and then multi-factor authentication. You'll all have seen, I think most people have seen it on their banks, where they have to put in a code via an authenticator, or it's come from a text message. That extra layer stops hackers getting in from the internet as such. So just really be aware of your password management. Start to think about it. Start to change them. And then at a company level, And I think this goes for all sizes of companies, actually, assuming that your IT team or, say, an external IT provider is managing your cybersecurity for you. I think it's a very common mistake that I come across when I speak to organizations, and I ask them to explain, what their cybersecurity, information security program is, and what's the strategy. And actually, it's an assumption that somebody else is managing for them. It's not contractually bound, it's not supported. So really, my advice is a risk management, information security strategy and program should be created and driven from the board. It should be part of your overall risk management approach, as I've mentioned earlier. And from there, you get the appropriate stakeholders involved, the technical teams, the compliance teams, and such, to make sure you're doing the appropriate things at the right times.
And I'm sure that will give our listeners plenty to think about in terms of password hygiene. And it was really interesting to learn about the common mistake at an organizational level as well. And what risks do you predict will develop in the future relating to cybersecurity?
So we kicked off with talking about compliance, especially for in the legal sector. I think that's going to grow, and the burden of it, both in resource and financially, is going to grow as well. Right now, we have GDPR. It's got more teeth than it did when it initially came in, but I think that's going to have more weight. And I think there will be the others that come, and they already are emerging in different sectors as is appropriate. From there, I think we're straight into, and this has a compliance flavor as well, into AI and machine learning. So both from a hacker's point of view, AI and machine learning attacks are going to get more sophisticated and more persistent. So using the power of those solutions to attack more things, to automate them, to make phishing attacks more realistic. This is going to happen, and we need to be ready and prepared to respond to that in kind. And then actually AI as a capability for organizations, we can see how much is happening since ChatGPT came online, how many apps are being built, how many integrations are being done, bills are being passed, and compliance is coming for that. So we need to get ahead of it, understand it, and again, be able to respond and do compliance and security by design for those solutions. I think as well is relevant to that is ransomware evolution. So whether it's using AI or it's just that these programs are becoming more sophisticated, and also knowing how to get around loopholes, not actually releasing data or de-encrypting when ransoms have been paid. We can probably see more of that emerging. A couple of other points probably to note are cloud security challenges. I think most people will have observed that most solutions that they use now, most platforms, most applications are cloud hosted. You can access it from the internet, and this might not mean a huge amount to everybody, but for internal teams or people that are clients that are building solutions in the cloud, again, can be an assumption that it's secure, right? Because you're using a cloud provider, AWS, Microsoft, Azure, and such. That's not actually the case, and you still, as an organization, need to be on top of security and embed cloud security into your overall strategy. And then, lastly, I think we can talk about supply chain. Even in the legal sector, there is a reliance on all of the applications I just talked about in terms of supporting solutions or suppliers for many things. They absolutely, even if you think you've got the most robust and resilient security program, suppliers, partners bring risk. And so it's about due diligence in understanding that risk and doing the appropriate things to protect yourselves, even with trusted partners.
That's really interesting. And it's, it's the whole AI element to, the risks that come along with AI developing as rapidly as it is, must mean that you're kept very busy with clients, trying to keep on top of that. So yeah, it's an exciting time for technological developments, but I suppose with that comes an increase in risk. So I think it's a very interesting time at the moment.
Absolutely. I think all emerging technologies, and I think when we say emerging technologies, that would have been a few at a time, a few years ago. But now it feels like we are steamrolling along, with AI being attached to that development streak. I think we're going to see more and more interesting functional technology come out, but with that, of course, is the associated risk, and we need to understand that and protect ourselves properly.
Of course. Well, thank you very much, Charlotte. It's been a really insightful episode. It's been great to have you on the show and to find out more about cybersecurity and, what we can do as potential employees of law firms to assist with keeping the data secure. Like you said earlier in the episode, law firms and other businesses are prime targets for cybersecurity attacks because of the sensitive data that they hold. It's something that we obviously all have to keep on top of, and it's something that's high on the agenda for law firms. So hopefully this will be of some use to aspiring lawyers who are making applications to law firms at the moment, because I think knowing what law firms' pain points are is going to help you out in the long run. So yeah, thank you. I think it's been a fantastic episode, and thank you to all of the listeners as well for tuning in. Please do leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you enjoyed the episodes, or if you've got any comments. But until next time, goodbye, and thank you, Charlotte, for joining us.
Thanks so much.
And we'll also leave links to CSS Assure in the description box of the podcast. So if you'd like to find out more about them and what they do, you can head on over to their website. Until next time, goodbye.
To hear more of the Student Lawyers podcast, hit the subscribe button and leave us a star rating and review. If you would like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com. Don't forget that if you're looking for a way to remove the weight of the world from your shoulders, the therapists at BetterHelp are qualified to help you through your daily stresses. Just visit www.betterhelp.com/TSL for 10% off of your first month. That's betterhelp.com/TSL for 10% off of your first month.